Good morning. Good morning. Just hit the light when you're ready.
Two 292 and communication.
Okay.
843. With 292, I moved here 9 years ago from Maui. I've lived on Maui for 16 years. Lived in Hawaii, which got to be too busy and too crowded with all the tourist development. And also living near the sugarcane field was disturbing to me. So I moved to Lower Puna, Pohiki Road. I'm in the mile, just outside the mile zone of the geothermal. And I'm a chiropractor in town. Treat a lot of people there. Care about my community. In the first 9 years, I had no problem living on Pohiki Road. Although I knew the geothermal was in the area, I never noticed it. When I got my notice at late March that they'd be beginning drilling, I still didn't quite grasp what was going to happen. But once they started drilling, it happened so suddenly that I'm lying in bed about 8 o'clock, well, 9, 10 o'clock at night. I'm pretty early. And the vibration was so strong that it actually frightened my wife and I. And we didn't quite understand what it was. And then finally, when we grasped what it was a very scary next 100 days. And the sounds that it makes all night long, very disturbing. And I can only say this, that the last 60 days since they've stopped drilling, I've slept much better. And I feel much more healthy and able to do my job that I care to do and enjoy doing. So I never intended to live in an industrial area where I'd be kept up 24/7 and no recourse. So I fully support this bill. I hope that the gentlemen do the Aloha thing and vote for it, and so that people who live in the area, who move to the area, can sleep at night and do their jobs during the day, just like everyone else wants to do. And I can understand the economics behind the geothermal plant not wanting the bill to go through, and that's an issue, but I'm sure they can work around that, just as we've all worked around their noise-making activities. So thank you very much for that.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Lozano.
And then on the other, the communication 843, I don't know how effective the county council can have on the state, much if they could have much effect on the legislature. But as I've examined,
Oh, yeah, wrong committee.
That's next hour.
That's next hour. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I had to wait an hour. Okay.
Thank you for that. Okay, Barbara, why don't we start with your first testifier in Poho, and we have 2 more testifiers signed up in Hilo, so we're going to
This is a little different than council. Make your
Barbara, your
testimony
first
on each
Thank
committee
you,
level.
Chair.
Okay?
First
So you did a good job.
testifier
Good
is
job.
Toby Hazel, and she is commenting in support of Bill 292.
Hi, good morning, everybody.
Hello.
And well,
Hey.
you know, I have to first of all kind of apologize. I don't know to the council, but to the mayor about noise. He got booed out of the meeting on Friday night, and there was a lot of noise involved in that. I'm sure he wasn't happy about it. And personally, I guess one of the testimonies that I've made to you upset him greatly, where I was wondering why he was coming into Pahoa in the middle of the night and stealing our garbage and sending it to Kona. But now I realize it may be worse. I mean, I don't want to offend him. I don't want to be disrespectful. But it seems now that he's involved in stealing our peace of mind, our sleep, and our way of life. And I'm concerned that for 2 years, he met with the geothermal working group over in Honolulu or wherever they met, never came out to Puna, never talked to us. And yes, I mean, sleep deprivation is something quite serious. And if each well is going to be rattling around and keeping people up for 100 days, I guess he can expect that he's going to get a lot of noise from all these people. Never mind the fact that they probably can't even sell their places and get out. Because now, of course, we've blocked that route to relocation. I don't know, does the mayor get to veto this thing even if you pass it? What will bring him to realize that he's causing this booing to happen? I don't know, it seems like a very sad thing. I've seen some people always make fun of people that live in Puna, lunatics, crazy people. Well, they're gonna get more crazy if they can't sleep. I don't know what to say about it, and, you know, yes, it might cost a little bit more, but it might be a compromise that needs to happen. You know, the county council, it's sad to me that you guys weren't able to unify yourselves and overcome the mayor's veto. Of course, the last word will be who wins the election this next time around, and whether there's a more sympathetic person in office. I know that Billy has done a lot of good things, but I mean, one of the reasons people booed him was because he came in to say how wonderful it was that there was solar energy on the police station. That's like a drop in the bucket. None of you guys should rest or be happy until there's solar on every single building, and then come back and talk with us about what's necessary to drill. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Okay, we're going to switch back to Hilo. Our next testifier here in Hilo is Bob Ernst, testifying on Bill 292.
Aloha, council members. I support Bill 292. I submitted 2 written testimonies that you should have before you there, which I'm going to refer to later on. A man's home is his castle. A man's home is his castle and should be free of all outside nuisances, including those from PGV. You're not here, Mr. Yagong, but I thank you for sponsoring this bill. It is probably 30 years overdue. This isn't even your district, but you have done what others have not. These PGV violations must be corrected, not vetoed, and vetoes upheld by this council. That does not help those impacted by ORMAT, noise pollution that is not PONO. If you look at page 79 of the Henry Curtis Energy paper, you will see his recommendation. 100% power from geothermal. And on page 81, and this is a very good, for those that aren't familiar with the impacts of geothermal from the beginning, on page 81 and the pages beyond that, it tells explicitly what the problems with geothermal are. I'm just going to read on page 81. Resistance to developing geothermal facilities is largely the result of 2 things: arrogance and the lack of safeguards. In the past, some proponents sought to aggressively campaign for geothermal with little concern for the local population. I'm going to emphasize that again. With little concern for the local population. That is why we are here today, talking about little concern for the local population. My living room in my home and my dining room windows look out over PGV. I smell or hear nothing from PGV. That is because my home is 8 miles MoCA of PGV. Because of ORMAT being a bad neighbor, will anyone want them anywhere near their neighborhoods in the future? I doubt it. I understand ORMAT wants to do more geothermal on this island, but they have poisoned the pot. Geothermal goals and positions I provided in another paper for you, and I submitted this to the DOE at the hearing I wish you had all been to on Friday at Hilo High School. There were 65 speakers at that meeting, and every one of them mentioned the negatives, probably, of geothermal. Harry Kim was there. He's older than I am, and he was there the entire evening and listened to the input of people on these problems with geothermal. If you look at the geothermal goals and positions that I submitted to you, they say no construction or operation noise outside the property line. All noise from whatever source must be contained on site. No geothermal related related air pollution beyond property line. All air pollution must remain on site. All geothermal site impacts must remain on site. Geothermal power generation on Hawaii Island is for consumption on Hawaii Island only. No geothermal power will be generated for off-island. There will be no connection to off-island cable to exploit geothermal generated power. Geothermal generation locations shall be diversified geographically so a natural occurrence, meaning an earthquake or an eruption, will not eliminate all geothermal generation. Item 6 is cultural. This is a draft. Number 7, no industrial uses will be permitted at a geothermal power generation site. Number 8 is penalties. And these would be penalties that would preclude them from continue operating if they do not meet these guidelines. And I thank you very much. I just want to remind you, you have a wonderful dog ordinance. I think this council did a dog barking ordinance with penalties. If we can have an ordinance for penalties for barking dogs, we better be able to do it with geothermal. Mahalo.
Any concerns? Okay, Barbara, your next testifier in Pahoa.
Mr. Chair, next testifier is Leslie Wingate, and she is speaking in support of Bill 292.
Aloha. Mahalo for hearing what the public has to say, and I hope that you really are listening and feel that our concerns are important. When I left the meeting in Hilo High School on Friday, I heard that there were 73 people there to testify, and everybody I heard talked about the negative aspects of geothermal drilling, and I want to really thank Mr. Yugong for introducing this article that would limit the drilling so that people can get sleep. I just bought land about 3 miles from the plant, and I have felt some really low frequency vibrations, and I don't know if they're coming from the plant or not. But I want to say I'm in support of this bill, and I'd also like to see it made a bigger radius, because I think that from what I've heard, it's usually a 10-mile radius around a geothermal plant anywhere else in the nation so that people can be kept safe. And I think for the noise, it would be great if that radius was 5 or 10 miles instead of 1 mile. But I appreciate that the article's being introduced and that at least the drilling can stop at night. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Okay, our next testifier here in Hilo is Pu'ena Ahu. Will be followed by Mike Kelly.
That's Pu'ena on. Thank you.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Read the pen.
Quite all right. Good morning to the council. I suppose one of the few in here to voice my support for Bill 292. Really quick, what I wanted to reiterate was a point that was brought up by Council Member Yugong at one of the previous council meetings at which I believe the ORMAT people were present. And the story that he relayed was, to my understanding, something to the effect of getting out of his car either at or near the PGP premises and it being a deafening sound that even he understood that, boy, that really would drive people nuts. Now, granted, I am actually not a resident of the Lower Puna area, but I do genuinely feel for these people, particularly all the young children who have to endure this, and they are the primary ones. I mean, granted, the elderly and whatnot, but these low frequency vibrations, the deafening noise, they're the ones who are going to suffer the worst of the emotional and psychological effects that this could have long term if this bill is not passed, or heaven forbid if it's vetoed. And that is just about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Okay, our next testifier in Pahoa, Barbara.
Mr. Chair, our next testifier is John Olson, and he will be commenting on Bill 292.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Morning.
Thank you for finally getting around to this. On the comment side, I grew up in an area where oil and gas drilling was quite common. And in fact, the Standard Oil company drilled oil and gas wells in an area of Los Angeles called the Wilshire District. If you're unfamiliar with that, it is an area of it's commonly has $1 million and had $1 million plus homes when $1 million meant something. They did that drilling without any impact to the surrounding community. The drilling rigs were entirely soundproof. They were in commercial and residential areas. You could walk right up to the exterior of the drill rig and not hear the drill rig running. So when I took this up with the people at PGB in the early 90s, they of course were aware of the technology, but they told me it was too expensive to be bothered with here. So the technology has existed for a very long time to accomplish the end. If I have other concerns, it is that this is too confined. Drilling is not the only noise issue that geothermal creates. Geothermal is by its nature an industrial process. And it's noisy. Can that noise be mitigated? Yes. After the blowout, the Environmental Protection Agency sent an acoustical engineer out primarily to assess the area which we had been impacted by the blowout and how far that spread and what EPA was going to do in terms of fining PGV for having done that. They issued a report. The County of Hawaii received a copy of it, and I would suggest that you dig it out of the files and have a look at it before you go too much further. I was curious. We spent 2 days with the acoustical engineer. One of the top questions was, why could my neighbors, who were a mile or two further away from the plant, be impacted by the noise when I, living across the street, could barely hear it? And he had a most interesting and complex answer to that question. And I think it's the answer you should be looking at to assess the total impact of what's going on out there. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. We're going to transfer back to Hilo. Here we have Mike Blakely testifying on Bill 292.
Morning, aloha. I'm here in opposition to Bill 292. And having said that, I would like to acknowledge that we are indeed an industrial facility. I would also like to acknowledge that drilling does generate additional noises. But having said that, because of the noise from our industrial facility, there are rules, there are regulations as to noise limits, etc. And we have always tried our best to be as low as we can with the noise generation. In fact, we have been in compliance with noise during drilling and during normal operations of the plant. A concern that we have is that the proposal, as it states, to limit drilling to daytime hours only, would be that the drilling process itself could be prolonged as much as 2 to 3 times longer. And one of the drawbacks to that is that with the drilling requirements that we have, if we needed to cease drilling at night, we would be required to operate the majority of the equipment on the drill rig, thereby noise will still be generated. And so the noise reduction at night would not be a large amount. So I think that is our main point, is that it will prolong the drilling process and the noise reduction will be minimal. Now, what we've always tried to do is to implement best available technology to minimize the noise generated during evolution such as the drilling. For example, when we laid out the drilling rig with all of the auxiliary equipment required, there's large pumps, motors, air compressors that indeed generate noise. But we lay it out in such a way to try and minimize the noise getting out beyond our boundary, specifically to the community. So that is something that we will continue to strive and be more than happy to work with the county on improving our noise and minimizing the noise. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Okay, Barbara, you have another testifier in Pahua?
Yes, Mr. Chair, next testifier is Paul Kuykendall, and he's speaking in support of Bill 292.
Aloha.
Aloha.
My name is Paul Kuykendall, and I live a mile from TGV. I'd like to first thank the council and thank Chairman Yagong for introducing this resolution. I'm testifying in support of it. After listening to Bill. After listening to Mike's testimony, I just want to point out it would be okay with me if the drilling took longer if we could sleep at night. I live on a farm with a small cabin, and we have screens in some of the places without windows to close because that's Hawaii. So the noise from the drilling makes it difficult to sleep, and when I am awakened by it, it's hard to go back to sleep. I'd also like to point out, to follow John's comment, that it isn't just drilling noise. Just 2 nights ago on September 15th, both noise monitors were over 57 decibels for the turbines. I don't know what's happening out at the plant, but the noise has been increasing, especially in the evening, from the turbines. So this is going to be an ongoing problem we're going to have to address. I think this bill is a good first step, but the basic problem is that we all live in the country because we like the quiet, we like the sounds of the birds. Even the kokies are preferable to the industrial noise that comes from the plant. Last night, when we were trying to go to sleep, we were trying to figure out what the sound sounded like. It's like a train that doesn't ever stop, or a jet airplane that doesn't stop, and that's just the turbines. I'm not even talking about the drilling. The drilling went on from March until June, and that included the clanging of pipes and some very jarring sounds. So that inflicts both physical and psychological stress on all the residents, particularly on the children who have to get up and go to school. And I would encourage all of you, the next time PGV drills, and you know there will be a next time, to come out and witness for yourself what it sounds like, because once you've witnessed it for yourself, you'll have a shift in perception as to what it's like. Also, I'd encourage you to go out and listen to what the turbines sound like, because it is a very industrial noise. It's like living near an airport or a freeway. And none of this, of course, was disclosed when we purchased our property out in the country that is zoned agricultural. So I'd like to thank the council. I appreciate this council because I know there are members of this council who care about the health and safety of the citizens of Puna. And I deeply appreciate that. It helps me have trust that we have a government that cares. Mahalo.
Thank you, Mr. Kuykendall. Okay. Our next testifier here in Hilo is Kerry Marks. Should be followed by Tom Yee.
Morning, folks. I live, I don't know, 30 or 40 miles from PGV. Can't hear it from my house. But I went down to Aurora's once. We had a meeting, and it got over. So I went over to her house. I was invited over to hear the drill rig. So I went over there about 8 o'clock at night. And the first thing I notice is when you pull onto her street, you can see the drill rig right there behind behind the neighborhood, which seemed really close to me. Then you go down and you pull up her driveway, and as soon as you pull onto her street that she lives on, it's right there at the end of the street. It was epic, you know. There's her house, there's her road, and there's the big lit up drill rig at the end. So then I got out of the car, and you could hear it. It was a clanging, clanging, banging, grinding kind of noise. But it didn't seem super loud to me. And I mentioned, you know, oh, it sounds really weird, but it's not super loud. And they said, no, it's not really loud right now. Just wait though. So I was there from about 8 o'clock till about midnight. And sure enough, every hour or so, it got louder. It got louder and louder. At 10 o'clock, it got pretty loud. At 11 o'clock, it was like on the hour, they ramped it up. And it wasn't your normal industrial noise like I've ever heard before. It was the creepiest, weirdest noise I have ever heard in my entire life. I don't know if you are a sci-fi bug or have ever seen the movie The Langoliers by Stephen King, but the Langoliers were these horrible creatures that ate yesterday, and they made this terrible noise that went. That's what it was like. It was like the drill rig was eating the ground. Um, so that was my experience of it. Also, Aurora has testified in the past about the vibration, and Mr. Ikeda, you also mentioned that you know that vibrations can affect the body strangely, and that happened in her house too. When you walk in the front door, there was a living room, and then you walk up a half flight of stairs to a big hallway, and then there's a room and a room. In that hallway was like this weird geothermal vortex of vibration hell. It was really strange. In the living room, you couldn't hear it or feel it, but on the stairs you could. You step out of that hallway into the room closer to the drilling rig, and you couldn't hear it. You step back, and it was there. It was very strange. Um, so I think a geothermal noise drilling ordinance is a really good idea. And even though I don't live there, I am here to support it. That's it. Mahalo.
Thank you, Ms. Marks. Okay, Barbara, you have another testifier before?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. I'm Ms. Van Weesman, and she's speaking in support of Bill 292.
Aloha.
I didn't know you were Kerry.
So,
Carrie, hi.
I
I'm
really
making this
appreciate
list of
you
everybody involved.
taking a look at this
Yeah.
and addressing this issue,
If you could
because
blog post so I
I've
can read
been
it, that'd be
coming
Every
to
time,
some of
I
these
love your
council
emails,
meetings
so you keep me
in the
very
last,
informed.
during the last year, and noise
We've been
has
working
often
on this
been
whole
one of my
thing
issues
since
that I've been concerned about.
January.
So thank you for addressing this. And I want to mention, I hear Mike Calakini, I hear him and the other people at PGB, and they say we meet all of our permits and all of the regulations. And based on the numbers, they do. However, you're probably aware that in the area that we live, in most of the county of Hawaii, we're zoned agricultural. And according to the state rules, in the agricultural areas, you have to be less than 70 dBA, day or night. It turns out that if you're near to a residential area, the daytime limit is 55 and the nighttime is 45. However, state of Hawaii apparently is not enforcing any of this anyway, because they don't have the equipment to do the measurements. So 70 dBA, it's A-weighted, which means that it doesn't take account of the low frequency noise. And as we heard Kerry just now describe very eloquently, you get resonance effects. The low frequency noise, the different frequencies correspond to different size wavelengths in buildings and in our body parts. And so the low frequency noise is a particular concern. And so even though that regulation 70 dBA is met, it's basically not relevant. State of Hawaii rules are not addressing what they say they're going to address in terms of the community well-being and health. And the World Health Organization rules for community noise address this very clearly. Back in 1980s, a long time ago, Burgess did a study on geothermal noise, and it was addressing mostly HGPA,
but it was looking at it in quite a lot of depth. And apparently in 1981, the Hawaii Council Planning Office did a study based on that report, and they came back and made a recommendation saying that the county should be limiting the noise. In 1987, PGV EIS actually looked at their noise modeling in quite a lot of detail, and they have contour plots and maps, and it completely underestimates the effects of the noise. And it also says that noise is likely to be minimal, an issue.
Oh, please summarize.
So I'm definitely in support of this bill. I think it's really important that the county is paying attention, and it's important. The no-night drilling is clearly defined. There's no need to take measurements, and we will be a lot better off should we, when we pass this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. Our next testifier here in Hilo is Mr. Thomas Ye.
Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee members. My name is Thomas Ye, submitting opposition testimony to Bill 292. Just to remind the council that when you're in an agricultural district, the same standards apply as if you were in an industrial district. So many discussions have been had about these being residential areas close by. You're in agricultural areas, farm equipment, industrial machinery, manufacturing plants, all those kinds of activities can occur. dBA levels that are set by DOH for these areas is 70 daytime and 70 nighttime. We're here because the primary concern that I'm going to address on behalf of PGV relates to some jurisdictional issues. The council may recall that when discussion took place as to the ability to use the Geothermal Asset Fund money to fund community benefits, the council was advised by Corporation Council that the use of the asset fund was restricted by the geothermal resource permit that had been issued by the Planning Commission. And therefore, the bill was withdrawn because of the lack of jurisdiction of the council to address that matter. The same principles apply here. The Planning Commission issued the GRP to PGV in 2001. It did so on authority provided to it under Chapter 205. And PGV has been in compliance with the noise standards that are set by the Planning Commission, which allow them to operate under both daytime and nighttime hour conditions. Similarly, the DLNR, Department of Land and Natural Resources, issues drilling permits for each and every well that gets done by PGV. And similarly, PGV was issued, for example, a noise permit from the Department of Health to operate its facility and its recent well, which again allowed it to operate under nighttime and daytime hourly conditions. These are the agencies which have statutory authority under the Hawaii Revised Statutes to issue the kinds of permits that PGV operates under. The problem with this bill also is that it goes well too far beyond any kind of prospective authority because it doesn't attempt to set standards or excessive noise standards, which would be the only type of authority that the council has to regulate noise issues above and beyond what has already been done by the permitting agencies. It's a very broad brush. You simply cannot drill in evening hours, not something that's going to pass legal muster. And so we would ask that the committee take a look at this, defer this bill, or withdraw it because of this jurisdictional issue.
Thank you for your testimony. Okay, Barbara, you have more testifiers?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair, sorry, more testifiers did come in. Our next testifier is Thomas Chavez, and he's speaking in support of Bill 292.
Hello, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. In response to what the last testifier said, most of the people that live in the area around PGV are on what are called agricultural farms, and it's certainly different than any agriculturally zoned area that I've observed outside of the state of Hawaii. I think we have to look at the nature of the community itself and understand that most of the people there are residents who farm rather than farmers who have residence. I agree that the council has little authority. In fact, Bills 55 and 97, both passed by the state legislature, have systematically disenfranchised the county of Hawaii from controlling the environment that occurs in Lower Puna. It has also disenfranchised the community in allowing development in which the community does not even have an opportunity to speak unless they are watching committee hearings on the island of Oahu. Additionally, we need to understand that this isn't about PGV. It's about industrialization of Lower Puna. Read the Geothermal Working Group's report, and it clearly says that they want to expand the geothermal footprint in Lower Puna. And additionally, they want to bring industrial activities in to Lower Puna to take the excess energy that would be generated by that geothermal during the nighttime hours when that geothermal energy is not needed elsewhere. The exploratory drilling envisioned by this expansion of geothermal and the drilling from the expansion of geothermal and from the industrial activities will create a noise environment that is very hostile. I applaud your efforts to make this, to encourage that this move of the state of Hawaii to energy sustainability is done with responsible community engagement. Thank you for your involvement.
Thank you for your testimony. We'll be switching back to Hilo. Our next testifier in Hilo is Mr. Dwight Vicente, testifying, providing comment on Bill 292.
Morning, my name is Dwight Vicente. I'm representing the Hawaiian Kingdom. All of this problem with geothermal is done in the name of the state of Hawaii, which is not a nation state. It does not represent the Hawaiian Kingdom. It has no land title. It has no treaties of commerce with any nation, including the United States. Never had a valid treaty. And you have to question what's going on. Who's running the show? And remember, there's no laws to naturalize anybody, so to provide power to who? There should be only Native Hawaiians here at this present time, unless foreign nationals be naturalized to the kingdom. But other than that, they cannot be coming here under the Monroe Doctrine, which is the Northwest Ordinance of 1787, which is what all these activities based on. It has nothing to do with general welfare of people, because it was designed to steal lands from Native people. In this case, it's a native civilized government, which is the Hawaiian Kingdom. It's not a uncivilized natives. So that's why you have all these problems going on. The state of Hawaii is not a nation state. It's a corporation created by the Monroe Doctrine, which has no authority to exist. And that being said, I think it's about time to terminate the state of Hawaii, because it's a fraud. We should not be living under fraud. And it's dangerous. We can see all the problems that the fraud creates. So I will end with the reservation of rights of this kingdom under the Queen's protest of January 17, 1893 against U.S. Minister Stevens, that has yet to go to the U.S. Supreme Court, Article 3, Section 2, Clause 2, original but limited jurisdiction only over U.S. Minister Stevens. And the other point is the Northwest Ordinance to be challenged, the venue is in Washington, D.C. It's an ordinance internal to D.C. between the President and the Congress. So to challenge that Northwest Ordinance, the case has to be filed in the U.S. District Court in D.C. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Okay, Barbara, your next testifier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Next testifier is Dylan Johnson, and he's speaking in support of Bill 292.
I support Bill 92 to establish a noise ordinance in Puna for geothermal drilling. I have heard the noise caused by geothermal drilling, and it is very loud and invasive. Several people have told me that at times it was so loud that it shook their whole house. The fact that it is allowed to go on all night in an area where people live is completely unacceptable. The last time they were drilling earlier this year, it went on for 120 days straight, 24/7. This had a huge impact on the health and well-being of residents in this community, raising stress levels and causing sleep deprivation, which is well documented to cause a wide variety of serious health problems, such as depression, psychosis, decreased cognitive function, obesity, and many others. Now with the proposed expansion of geothermal in Puna, my family and my neighbor's family are looking at the possibility of having several exploratory wells being drilled within a mile of us. We are very worried about the health effects and the loss of sleep. 24/7 industrial scale noise has no place in Puna, a residential and agricultural community. Thank you for your time.
For your testimony. Barbara, your next testifier.
Thank you. Our next testifier is Laura Travis, and she's commenting on Bill 292.
Hello. I'm concerned that the community that I love will become a loud, environmentally dangerous, and community-threatening industrial zone. Contrary to the claims of some, we in the community are not the old tired faces. We are a group of strong, vibrant people of all genders, ages, cultures, and time on island. We thank you for not ignoring us. Thank you for considering this bill that does something for our community.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our next testifier is Robert Patricky, and he is speaking in support of Bill 292.
Good morning, Council and Chairman Yoshimoto. I want to really thank the Council for bringing forward this legislation, particularly Chairman Yagon for, again, stepping up to try and help the Puna community. When PGV first started their operations, they didn't re-inject when they drilled wells. They open-vented those wells to the atmosphere. And they said, just as Mr. Ye has said, Mr. Kukini has said, that they had to do that they couldn't re-inject, and that was best available control technology. Well, that wasn't true as we see now. They don't open vent and clean out those wells to the atmosphere. They use a cyclonic separator. And the same thing goes for what they say about the noise problem with drilling. Of course they can control that noise. Of course they can do it a different way. Just like with the re-injection, PGV has a history of disregarding impacts to this community in order to smooth their path or increase their profits at our expense. And what is the health impacts to a community that is forced to endure this kind of noise 24 hours a day? The last well took 120 days. So imagine that you can't sleep for 120 days. And how do you balance that? If Mr. Ye is saying that it's legal, what they're doing is legal, how can that be legal? How can you do that to people and impact their health like that and it be legal? There must be a law that says that it's not legal to hurt people like that. I would challenge you to look in your laws, and all of these laws, seatbelt laws, you have to wear your seatbelt, you can't smoke in private buildings, but you can keep people up 24 hours a day because it's in PGV's financial best interest. I don't believe there's no law that will stop them. I really think that you need to pass this to start this process. Mr. Yi can call this an agriculture area all he wants. Thousands of people live in this area, and you all know that. And if there's a problem with the zoning, it's a problem that the county created in calling these ag lots. And I don't know what the solution is, but the impacts to the people, the residents that live there are the same. No other industry in the state of Hawaii is allowed to do that. When PGV was first drilling, they had a noise limit of 55 dB, and they lived with that for a while. But then they went and they got that amended. The permit was amended to 70 dB. And I don't understand why that was allowed. If they were within 55 dB before, they should have stayed there. Now I think that the realization is they shouldn't be able to drill 24 hours a day. You know, the trade-off here is the community's best interest or PGV's best interest. Your job, you work for the community. I'm sorry, but that's why we elect you, and you should be looking out for us. You know, our health interests and welfare have to come before PGVs, and it hasn't happened. The history has always been PGV has been put, their welfare has been put before this community. So, all right, just in summarizing, we're here again, as we have been many, many times before because of the problems that PGV presents this community. This is a particularly serious problem that's obviously needs to be fixed. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Barbara, do you have any more testifiers?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Right now we have 3 more testifiers, and next is Barbara Conlanger, and she is speaking in support of Bill 292.
Aloha.
Aloha.
It's good to see you all again, and to be speaking to you again is also very nice. I appreciate the opportunity to be part of a group that is taking a look at what we need to do as a broad community to establish new regulations regarding the development of a resource going on in our community. And the fact that, you know, one of the testifiers said that they are currently meeting all the regulations, it makes me smile. Of course they are. And those regulations don't work. They no longer work. They no longer work for the number of people who are living here now and for the way in which this whole area is changing. Personally, my husband and I are not affected by noise from drilling. But that doesn't mean anything to us. The fact that we live in HPP and wells are being drilled down in the Pohoiki area is a broad interest of ours, as it is for most people around this island. So I think it's imperative to pass this particular bill. I think it's imperative to limit drilling between the hours of 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. I want to thank Chairman Yagan. I want to thank all the members of every committee, all the council members, and I really would like the council, Mr. Yoshimoto, to really look carefully at all of the information presented and support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next testifier is Jeffrey Last, and he is speaking on Bill 292.
Aloha. Thank you for having us, and thank you for considering this. I can understand why you might have had trouble with the last 2 geothermal bills, but this one is pretty straightforward. We have these community out here that's agricultural, but we all know that it's residential. It's just logistics there. And we have a situation here where we have drilling allowed to go on all night long. And everybody's mentioned that it's 70 dBs, but they always forget the word before it. Everybody's testified average 70 dBs. Average. They use that all the time, and all these regulations is average. Well, I used to have a guy that used to live next door to me, had a Harley, and he'd drive in and it would putt, 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 and it wouldn't wake me up. But before he turned that Harley off, he had to grind it a little. Well, that woke me up. And I was up all night because of that. And that's what's going on out here. This bill is pretty straightforward. This is about money. PGV and all the other drillers are not going to want to stop drilling at night because of money concerns. Period. There's no other question of that. And every one of you knows that. Now, the rules are not written by you, but you can sure send a strong message to these people and you can support us in this measure. This is pretty straightforward. This isn't like the other ones. This is very straightforward. They do not need to drill at night. It's about money. Money, money, money. And you have to stop throwing us to the dogs out here as collateral damage. We are not collateral damage. There's going to be 20 drillers out here drilling all over the place, punching holes everywhere, doing what they want to do. And now you have to say you can't do this to that community. Even if you don't live out here, and even if you don't agree with us on everything, this noise thing at night has to stop. And you're the ones that can really put the foot forward to stop it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next testifier is Barbara Cousins, and she is speaking in support of Bill 290.
Good morning, councillors. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak about this bill, and thank you, Chairman Yagong, for bringing this bill to everybody for comment and hopefully for passing. And no vetoing, please. I heard Mike, manager of PGV, speak earlier saying that the current noise regulations are complied with. I believe it's you know, by the fact that there are so many people here this morning testifying about the noise issue is attesting to the fact that the current noise regulations are a problem and do need to be looked at, and I thank you for doing this. I'm concerned also, you know, that we're having at the moment, you know, a big impact on the health and safety of the residents in the area, where they are, during the period of 120 odd days where there was drilling going on, and again we'll be drilling shortly, I'm sure, the low level vibration of the sound that they were having to put up with day and night is causing all sorts of health effects and detrimental kind of sleep deprivation for people, causing huge amounts of stress to the individuals' bodies and to children living in the area. I'm very concerned about that. I have a background of working in the music industry, so I know a little bit about sound and particularly the low level impact of sound. But I'm also concerned about the higher level sound that is emitted by the turbines when they're in action. And I've heard many people talk about it being like being near a jet engine taking off, or a train constantly going and never going away into the distance. So, you know, living with that kind of constant stress, I believe, could cause one to be very ill. I'm also very concerned, as other people have mentioned, and you know, news in the media recently about the likely to be extended geothermal activities in the Puna area. This is not going to go away, this problem. It's actually going to get worse unless we can regulate for it now. I live in the Kapoho area, and I know of several places in that particular region that geothermal interests have leased land and will likely be doing drilling and putting in their geothermal units there if they're allowed. I'm concerned for my future of being able to live there as well. So I appreciate you hearing us today, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Our final testifier this morning, Mr. Chair, is Julia Paul, and she is speaking in support of Bill 292.
Hi, thank you this morning for the opportunity to speak. I appreciate it. I'm glad that this bill is being brought forward. I also live immediately in the community on Pohoiki Road. My name is Julia Paul. I sell real estate here in Pahoa since 1981. And yes, what's going on right now, all the talk, everything that's happening right now is really impacting our real estate market. We are not having any sales on Pohohowiki Road. Whatever we can do to mitigate the effects of the geothermal drilling so that we can encourage people to still want to, participate in our community. So we need to do at least the very minimal is just getting the drilling so that we're not listening to it at night. So, I mean, this is a good start, but this is only a start. I mean, you cannot compensate people for their loss in property values if you allow them to drill and allow them to drill all night. Nobody is going to want to live next door to that. Not one of you would want to live next door to noise at night. For me personally, that's why I live there, is because it's absolutely quiet at night. And that's one of the reasons I live there. And I don't think that you're going to be willing to compensate me for taking away my ability to use and enjoy my property, which is private property rights that we defend as real estate agents. So we defend the right to use and enjoy your property, your private property. And all this property is zoned agriculture. To me, geothermal is industrial. And it's a non-conforming use, and I've said this over and over and over again. It should never have been allowed near existing homes and should still not be allowed near existing homes. I appreciate your time. I hope that you will pass this bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Okay, Barbara, that was your last testifier?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I'm gonna check with the other sites to see if anyone else came in. Kona, any other testifiers today?
No testifiers here, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Yagong. And Ms. Dave, any other testifiers in my name?
No testifiers this morning, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we're going to proceed with our agenda. Moving on to referrals. Communication 825, Bill 292, amends Chapter 14, General Welfare of Hawaii County Code 1983-2005 edition as amended relating to the geothermal drilling. Initiates an amendment to Chapter 14 related to geothermal drilling by adding a new article that would restrict geothermal drilling to the operating hours of 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. introduced by Mr. Yagong. Mr. Yagong.
Move to approve Bill 292.
Okay, the second was by Ms. Ford. Go ahead, Mr. Yagong, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the opportunity for bringing this bill forward. First of all, council members, let me tell you the impetus for me bringing this forward. First of all, I had an opportunity to visit with residents at the Lanipuna subdivision, which is adjacent to the geothermal drill. I've been to the plant, visited the plant many times on just tours, but never during the time that drilling took place. It just so happened the day that I did go forward for this particular meeting, I recall distinctly coming out of my vehicle and turning off my radio and walking out of my car, and the second I got out of my vehicle, closed the door, the very first thought that I had in my mind was, what is that? And that was a geothermal drilling that took place. And I got to tell you, council members, if you've never heard it, if you've never been there personally, I don't think you can really realize the effect that it certainly can have on the people, of the surrounding areas, certainly those that are living in close proximity. So first of all, I just want to let you know that when I went to this meeting, not only were there adults there, but there were children there. And I said to the residents, what is that? And they said, that's a drilling. That's what we've been talking about. That's what we've been complaining about. And Dominic, this sound that you're hearing, which in my mind was very excruciating because it was extremely loud, the resident says, Dominic, this is nothing. This is nothing compared to what we hear, especially at night. So after that meeting, I attempted to go onto the property at PGV to actually witness the drilling and to see what I was hearing. I was not allowed on the premises at that time. They would not allow me to go onto the property to do this. Mr. Kalakini had left at that time, and I did not have an appointment, so I understood why they didn't allow me. But certainly I would have loved that opportunity to see that. But that is what began this whole thought, because as we were there at the meeting, the residents would express to me, Dominic, how difficult it is for not only for them to sleep at night, but for the children as well. Considering the fact that these kids need to get to school in the morning, and yet they're woken up in the middle of the night to hear this constant banging, this constant drilling that happens throughout the whole evening. So that's where this whole thing started. especially when you heard the testimony that came forward when we talked about Bill 256 and 257. Now, there was some talk brought forward in terms of jurisdiction and whether or not we have jurisdiction over the planning committee, planning department, or whether it be the Department of Health. Please understand one thing here that is absolutely clear. What this bill does, it does not take away any jurisdictional right to the planning department or DOH, because number one, with DOH, what they measure is decimals. What they do is monitor the sounds. This bill does not in any way, shape, or form, as Mr. Hoffman would say, affect that ability of DOH. I called DOH. I told them about the bill that we're going to talk about here and explain what it does in terms of the time, limiting the time that you can drill. That has nothing to do with DOH, because if we try to change the decibel sounds, then that'd be a different story. That will be a jurisdictional issue. In regards to the planning department, this does not tell the planning department that PGV or anyone else cannot drill. They can still drill. It doesn't change that fact that they can still issue permits for drilling. It's not jurisdictional. We're not taking that away. What Bill 292 is a bill of common sense and common decency. Common sense and common decency. I lived next to a sugar plantation my entire life. I grew right next to the plant. But here's the thing. What happened was they built the sugar plantation plant with all that industrial noise and equipment, and then build the homes around it of people that worked at the plant. So we lived dealing with the fact that the vocation and employment was the sugar plantation. So we lived with that. This is different. This is an agricultural community, a residential community, that we brought a plant to that community. And now we're saying, you guys got to live with that. You know, when I say this is about common decency and common sense, what this means is every individual, certainly we as council members, our jurisdictional responsibility is in Chapter 14, which is health and welfare for the people of the county of Hawaii. We have that jurisdiction over the health and welfare of the people of the county of Hawaii. A gentleman earlier said we have a barking dog ordinance. We have a barking dog ordinance, and yet we're going to say that it is not general welfare or health and welfare when we're talking about noise at 70 decibels. You know, so the way I look at it, what we need to understand here, folks, is this. Geothermal needs to drill to get to their resource. That's going to be part of them doing their business in terms of creating renewable energy. If you do close them out and say you can only drill to 7 o'clock, will it add costs to their operation? Absolutely. But you know what? It's a cost of doing business. I don't think the people of general welfare, you know, we could, you know, simply ignore the fact that sleep deprivation for children and adults that need to work the next day is something that we can push aside and say, well, you're in an agricultural district. Now, we can't do that, folks, because all you need to do is ask yourself, what if this was in Hualalai? What if this was in South Kona? What if this was in Waikoloa? What if this was in Honoka'a town? You know, it'll be something that we, as representatives, need to be aware of, that part of our responsibility is to protect the general welfare. And that's all this does, folks. It really does this. Now, I've had some information. I talked to Paul Thompson from PGV yesterday, and I was very encouraged by his discussion with me, as he says that there's measures that they can take. There's technologies that are out there. I think Mr. Olson spoke about it. But as Mr. Olson spoke, he said these technologies have been there for a long, long time. I absolutely think that PGV should come forward with these sound mitigation, these walls and these barriers. And you know what? It should be implemented. And not necessarily just for nighttime, but for daytime as well. These type of investments need to be made because it is a good faith effort to deal with mitigation factors for the community. So we should move forward with these mitigation measures that's being brought forward by Mr. Thompson. and I appreciate him doing that. But at the same time, that will not in any way, be able to minimize the type of difficulty that we're causing the people at night during drilling. And now keep in mind, folks, this is only during drilling. This noise ordinance would only apply during the time that PGV would be drilling, out in Puna. So it's not a 365-day ruling here. It's just when they drill. So, council members, I hope that I can get your favorable support with this. I think the community had expressed extremely well why this should take place, and I hope we can move forward with a positive recommendation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gong. Any other council members? Oh, actually, Mr. Ikeda?
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman, we'll take you right after Mr. Ikeda.
Thank you.
Who represents Mr. Brahma? Mr. Berlanti, you heard Mr. Yagong. I know we have no jurisdiction over this, over DMNR. I know it's a state issue. But what was very interesting what Mr. Yagong said, he felt that we could legislate time. Can you give me some feedback, please?
Good morning, Chair, members of the committee. I always seem to draw the short straw on these issues, but I appreciate you affording the opportunity to provide my opinion and comment on this issue. This is my concern as it relates to this bill moving forward, is that PGV historically has complied with all of the requirements set forth under the HRS, under the Hawaii County Code, and under everything the Planning Commission to obtain appropriate permits for their venture. And part of that process was a permit amendment in February of 2001 to the Planning Commission, wherein terms, conditions, and requirements were set forth as to what PBG was able to do at this particular site, the geothermal well site. And so I refer back to that permit from the Planning Commission. That permit is very clear and very concise and very specific as it relates to items regarding noise and allowable noise levels. And it's my understanding that up until this point in time, I haven't seen any other information contrary, but up until this point in time, these requirements have been satisfied by PBG. Now, the concern that I have with this is that now this proposed bill is saying, you know what, we don't care what that permit does, we don't care historically what's been going on. We're going to throw that away, and we're going to make you, PBG, comply with new requirements that are more stringent and stricter than what was originally granted and allowed for under the original permit. PBG, to my understanding, has not done anything at this point in time to necessitate new amendments. And I'm not sure that the County Council has the authority to make the amendment to the original permit that was issued by the Planning Commission. Now, that being said, if down the road PBG comes in and requests an amendment to the original permit, then yes, there's guidelines, there's safety features in place to afford for one public comment and further discretion or further consideration into whether or not the noise concerns of the drilling should be adequately addressed in a new permit. But that hasn't taken place here. This new requirement is going outside of that, and there's no justifiable basis as to why these new restrictions should be placed on a previously properly, adequately existing permit that's in place.
You answered my question.
Thank you.
You know, can I ask you a question? Because I heard something from testifying also from Mr. Yagong. According to the testifier, Mr. Yvonne, it seems like PG is, I'm not sure how to say, it's not using all their, I guess, resources to mitigate noise. You know, I know you guys are falling within the, you know, you're below your sound level, but they're saying there's sound mitigation equipment to cut down the sound further. You guys ever looked into that? Or can you guys look into that, something like that?
Oh yeah, definitely. There are many methods for sound mitigation. Now, I mentioned briefly, one of those methods is how you position equipment that generate noise, and we consciously have always done that to try to minimize noise. Um, there are options where you can put up barriers. In fact, we do have barriers at the existing plant that helps mitigate with noise. There are other engineering techniques like insulation of sound absorption, which we have implemented throughout the existing plant and the new plant. And so we definitely are looking and constantly looking at ways to improve and minimize noise, and we'd be happy to look at anything else that may be out there.
Yeah, well, I'm sure the plant's all right, but I was thinking, you know, by the drill sites, is it possible to put some kind of sound mitigation
Yes.
around the drill site? Because I think that's the problem. It's the drill site and not so much the plant.
Yes, it's possible.
And you know, like you said, I kind of support the deal, but yet I know you're spinning on wheels, so I don't like to spin the wheels. So I think both of you.
Thank you, Mr. Ikeda. Council members, you know, I see that I have a note that Mr. Hoffman, Mr. Plug, and Ms. Ford wanted to speak, but council members, I'm going to take a brief recess, maybe 5 minutes, and then we'll be back. Okay? Recess.
Are you with?
Well, for health issues, I mean, I wish I knew somebody. Well, I know, I don't know many. So you hear something? I looked at it. Okay. That nationwide, what's that? Oh, Geothermal. Appreciate it. I wish they do a study. I wish they do a study and say, you know what? Geothermal is really good power production. Solar is wind, whatever else. And you know what? The thing is, you're not really do that study. Plus, you need the geothermal. Actually, the utility does have such studies. Whether it's like local, they actually have done studies about the effects of which is not good. But when they do their studies, I mean, they look at it from a technical perspective and very steady. There's places around the world they fully accept if the wind dies and you lose power from the solar panel. Or, you know, if the power comes from your solar panel, you know, there's places like that. We're not like that. Philippines is a place like that. Mexico is not a place like that. You know that, right? You know that the places that accept electricity goes up. Go do something, it'll come back on in a few minutes, and like, all the time. Yes. Oh, no, I was just, you're the one with the parkway, okay. I got that. The PowerPoint, I want to, this is still ongoing here. We had another one this morning. We're up to $33,000 now. Yeah. Well, for the ads. For the ads, 33,000. I see them every. I'm shaking my head. What's up with you guys? I mean, I know it. Well, and the council asked them not to do it. I think they're influencing the paper though, because the paper is not covered. They didn't even cover the so I think the paper might sell us money. I'm saying money. Put it here. Here's my bill. Put it here. This comes in your bill every month. Put it here. Don't do it. I want to read about that. But don't waste my money. This is my money. They say it's coming from the stockholders. The stockholders aren't paying for that. They pay the money to the stockholders. That's not a big issue.
No, I know, it's a principle, and I don't know how they handle that myself, so I can't answer.
Maybe like you do. Community meeting, we'll come meet with you. Don't waste your money. Don't waste our money. Jump up my house and spill money.
I would love to have you.
Well, it's two things. That's our bill. That's the bill. And, we know something called, you can have water heating use is a third of the energy. Because when we do this, one of the things, I give it to the DOE. One of the things on the spreadsheet is convenience of the people say, I know family starts every day, they're flying out to go to work. Hey, we'll be back up in our book, it's not gonna work, you know? But yeah,
Okay, Kona? Mr. Hoffman, can you hear me? Well, Dave can hear me, all right. Barbara can hear me, looks like. I see Ms. Ehoff talking to Mr. Palago, but I don't see any reaction out there. All right. Kona, when you can hear me, we're ready to get started again.
Dave,
Oh, there we go.
see you and we can hear you.
Oh, okay, thank you for acknowledging, Ms. Ford. It's been a while. Okay. Are we ready to get started again?
Dark.
Kona? Okay. We're going to call the meeting back to order. Next up in the queue is Mr. Hoffman, followed by Mr. Palago, followed by Ms. Ford. So, Mr. Hoffman, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Trying to put the comments that I heard in context this morning is quite interesting. We've been over this ground, it seems,
on fairly extensively, but I now hear, and that it's certainly verified by by several members of the public who testified, I guess, that PGB is an industrial facility, and that, my gosh, it happens to be a noisy industrial facility. These are remarkable statements, I guess. The reason I'm making a little bit of fun at this particular point is that we all know that there is an issue there. And the first thing that I have in mind is to wonder why it has to be the council who is attempting to take the initiative on an issue that seems so evident, so self-evident to almost everyone in the county and in the community that's being affected adversely. I cannot understand why the county hasn't taken the initiative, why the administration hasn't assisted in this effort. They can't be ignorant of the problems that seem to be affecting this particular community. I sometimes wonder on this whole PGV issue why it has to be the council who seems to be the only one taking the initiative. And it's particularly pertinent because later on today we'll be discussing the PLDC, and when we consider this idea of public lands, this is exactly some of the issues that we'll be facing and why that particular topic has also generated such adverse comment. Nevertheless, I have no argument that PGV has adhered to the specific guidelines and the exact constraints of their permit under the DNLR process. But what we're saying is, as Mr. Yagong, I think, pointed out most eloquently, is that we're not arguing whether there are any additional requirements being added. We're simply trying to, in some way, shape, or form, point out to everyone who can hear that there is an issue for public health and safety and for the concerns of the people who are located within the close proximity of the PGV facility. Why is it so difficult to understand that there could be changes? There's nothing wrong with what PGV has done. What is wrong is that for whatever reason, the administration and PGV working together have not found what could be an obvious fix or solution to the problems that the community is raising. And this council does have a responsibility in order to ensure that those concerns are properly addressed, adequately reviewed, and in whatever way, shape, or form, corrected if we can do that. I have no problem with this particular bill that's being raised by Mr. Yagong. I don't have any problem with it because I know it's a situation that should be addressed. What are we here for, I keep saying, if it's not to address these particular issues? Why do we not have cooperation on the part of other agencies and the administration in working cooperatively to seek these types of solutions? Where have we missed the point? I ask for support for this particular bill because I think it will address not just this particular issue, but a number of others that should be reviewed. Not because PGV has done anything wrong, but simply because common sense and public health and safety demand some change or alteration in the situation that this community has faced for the past 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffman. I think Ms. Ford is next. I stand corrected. Is that correct, Paula?
It was kind of simultaneously between Mr. Palago, and I don't mind him going first.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Ms. Ford. Thank you, Chair Yoshimoto. I have 3 items. I'll be very brief on all 3. First, I wish to note to this committee and to you that we've received communication 825.1 from Planning Director Dita Todd, which submits comments and concerns regarding Bill 292. And just for the record, that this committee has received that. Also, sir, the second item is that
In addition to the oral and verbal testimony, we've received 9 written testimonies. All 9, sir, in favor and in support of Bill 292. And the third item, again, I wish to be brief on is that the powers that are in place and the agencies and institutions, for example, PGV, Land and Natural Resources State, County Planning Department and Corporation Council, have all represented their interests and their priorities, which is all well and good. Unfortunately, in my view, they do not include the community nor residents' quality of life impacts. This county council is obligated to be the venue for that community's voice, and we here take a stand and join the community in respect to this health issue. We are the only venue available where a collective voice can be given to all of these other agencies, and we're pleased to be that, and thank the community for being here to voice their concerns. But those are 3 items, sir, I wish to present at this time, and I speak in support to 292. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pelago. Ms. Ford?
Thank you. I'm not going to go over all of the health risks that the public and other members of council have already identified. I support every one of those statements. I want to talk about, first of all, the jurisdictional responsibilities of the council. The state constitution sets up the counties and requires the counties to have a charter. So we operate under the state constitution, and in the county of Hawaii, we operate under the Hawaii County Charter. That charter specifically assigns the policy-making function to the county council, not to the planning commission and not to individual private businesses, but to the council. I know that there are some people that are employed by the county that disagree with that. Specifically, Mayor Kanoy, through his planning director, Ms. Leadhead Todd, has sent us the letter that Mr. Pelago referred to, and says that the geothermal drilling noise is under the DLNR. Not true. We can set policy. They also talk about the enforcement. What department in the county is going to enforce this? Well, obviously it's the planning department. If the planning commission is giving permits and they operate under the planning department, then it's the planning department that is supposed to be taking responsibility for the enforcement of these types of laws. Let me talk about specifically Mr. Yagong's bill. This is not directed necessarily at PGV. I'm not going to pretend it hasn't originated because of PGV. But this is a policy bill. It does not prohibit geothermal on this island. It does not prohibit drilling on this island. What it does is say that the time period for drilling is between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. being conducted within 1 mile of any residence. That is a policy statement. You'll notice it doesn't say PGV. Because I'm telling you right now, there's going to be geothermal drilling, if it already hasn't started, in Kona. And everything that's going on in Puna that's a detriment to the community is going to go on in Kona around Hualawai. So this bill is a policy bill. It is not a spot bill against a particular driller, but it is a generic policy issue that this council has the legal right and the obligation to pass to protect the public. So we have the jurisdiction granted by the state constitution and our charter to set policies, and that's what we're doing. Secondly, any future geothermal plant is going to have to comply with the bill. So the question is, does the current one have to comply with the bill? I maintain that they do. And the reason is the time of day for drilling is not covered by any state law currently. The state law is moot on this issue. Therefore, we, the county, have the right to set the policy on this particular issue. Again, we didn't say they couldn't drill at any time in 24 hours. We said during daytime, 7 to 7, you can drill. I am fascinated by Mr. Olson's testimony that the Wilshire District, which I'm a little bit familiar with, was able to have drilling rigs in there for oil and gas and not disturb the community. And I have to wonder, with all of the brouhaha going on with the turbines and everything else, why PGV hasn't stepped up to this issue, as Mr. Hoffman has stated. But in the future, I think we're going to need to address that issue by this council, that the baffling of the noise, that the suppression of the noise needs to be taken into consideration. And I'm not willing to assume that the state's going to deal with it or a planning commission is going to deal with it. I think we're going to have to set a policy on the council. That's a different issue, though, for a different day. The third thing, we have a public hazard in operation. It's not, let me be very clear on this. I am geothermal neutral. I'm not for it, I'm not against it. But if there are negative side effects that need to be addressed, that's what I prefer to deal with. But we have a public hazard in that the community cannot sleep, leading to sleep deprivation, children not being able to learn well in school, physical problems that we haven't gotten to, and the medical issues that we still haven't gotten to. This is a public hazard. Our charge as a council and as a county is to protect the public health, safety, and welfare. That is the charge of all governmental municipalities, of which we are one by state constitution. It is our responsibility to help to mitigate this hazard if it's going on and it's not being addressed well. I am not suggesting that PGV has violated any state laws, but we can tell that maybe they haven't been as good a neighbor as they could have been. For financial reasons, they haven't baffled the noise to the extent they probably should. It's unfortunate that an industrial operation was allowed next to residences in agricultural area, but that is what it is. Now we have to do something to mitigate the negative impacts, and that's what this bill does. I support this bill because I believe in the charter of the County of Hawaii, that this council has the right to set a policy, and all this bill is doing is setting a policy today for any existing geothermal plant, and for heaven's sakes, in the future, any new one that comes along, the Planning Commission or any other agency that has their fingers in the pie for permits or anything else needs to address these issues so that we do not have a repeat of all the problems that we're having with the particular plant in Puna. So, Mr. Yagong, I applaud you for bringing forward this bill, and I think we should all pass it. And for as far as Ms. Leadhead Todd's letter, that obviously she is speaking for the mayor. She works for him. I'm a little concerned about the fact that she does not see that the council has policy-making authority. She doesn't see that her department is the agency responsible for enforcing this, even though her planning commission is the one that issued the permit. And we need to deal with the soundproofing in the future, maybe for this plant and certainly for other plants. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Ford. Mr. Corner, we're going to switch back to Hilo. Mr. Boss.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am really full support of health and safety for the community. Sleep, you need to have at least 7 to 8 hours of sleep before you be able to work the next day, or whatever you're going to do. I look at resting as more important than really being hungry. I can tell you that for a fact. I'd rather be hungry than not get enough sleep. I'll be honest with you. Because if you're hungry, you can eat, and then you can go to sleep. But if you don't have enough sleep, you can't catch up. So I am really for support of this bill, and hopefully we'll take this along. And I don't say a lot of words, but I mean what I say. But let's take it home, Mr. Chair. Let's vote for it, and let's get it going. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blas. Ms. Smart, did you want to speak on this issue?
Yes, thank you so much for acknowledging me before I actually let you know I was interested. First of all, Thank you, Mr. Yagong, for bringing this forward, and thank you again to PGV for being here. I don't think it should come as any surprise that this ended up coming forward in bill form. As the other bills, during those discussions, we heard a number of, this way, there we go. We heard a number of concerns about the noise. And in fact, I went to the women's health study. We asked Mr. Kalakini what could be done. Are there things that we can do? What kind of buffers can be put in place? Can we have quiet hours? And they seemed very receptive to working with the community to help address those concerns. I guess I was a little optimistic that the PGV would take it upon themselves to put some of those measures in place, if nothing else than to be a good neighbor. I think I even brought it up in council as one of the options in our discussions, and Paul, I forget his last name, also seemed fairly receptive. So I'm glad he continued to sound receptive, Mr. Yagong, when he spoke with you. I will be supporting this. I find it unfortunate that it has to be done by a bill. Again, I don't really care whose jurisdiction it is. I don't really care whose enforcement it is. It just is the right thing to be done. It needs to be passed, and we can work out that aspect of it later as it gets implemented. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smart. Anyone else from Kona wanted to speak? Anyone? Ms. Smart, the camera's on you. Oh, there you go. Okay. Mr. Yagong, did you want to make any closing comments before I provide some comments?
No, thank you.
Oh, okay. Okay, I guess there's no one else that wanted to speak. Let's see. My only comment that I have at this point is if a corporation counsel could provide us with an opinion or an analysis as far as the things that were mentioned today about the jurisdictional issues and anything else that may be relevant to this issue to help us make a decision. And I think the issues raised today are very important. I think the proposal appears reasonable. Then again, I think we need to make sure that whatever we do, we can actually do and have some enforcement on it. And if PGV has any other information or suggestions they want to bring up to us, I think now would be a good time to do that prior to the next meeting. My comments have spurred Mr. Ikeda to ask for the floor. Mr. Ikeda.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned it. Mike, can you please come up again? I heard the testifier saying it sounds like a train going through the neighborhood. I heard jet engine, and you say you're below what is it, 70 decibel? What's the average?
I think generally we're in the 55 decibel range on average as far as the plant. And during drilling, there were times we were above 60. But we were actually doing a noise study because of the expansion. It was separate from drilling, but we're required by the county permit to do this noise study. And the preliminary reports is that in general, the daytime noise is around 55. So you can hear the plant. I mean, it's a facility, you can hear it. But we've been averaging 55, and at night it's been about 55 also. What we found out is like the background noise is generally higher at night, and that's mostly due to coqui frog noise.
And what is 55 dB?
Well, if you are within arm's reach of someone, and if you need to raise your voice so that the other person can hear, that is around 60, 65 decibels.
You heard the comments about drilling on Wilshire Avenue, in LA. I'm very familiar with that. I actually close by when I was going to school. And believe it or not, I thought they were building some kind of a 4 or 5 story building. I'm not sure how high is your drilling site. How high is your drilling site?
The rig, the dirt, will be about 250 feet.
The one that I've seen, the one you were talking about, And it's really true, it was very quiet, but I thought it was a big building that they were gonna build. And there was no noise, no dust, no nothing, and I didn't even know that they were drilling for oil there. So it's just food for thought, but, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ikeda. Any other comments from council members? If not, Mr. Clerk.
Blas.
Aye.
Ms. Ford.
Aye.
Mr. Hoffman.
Aye.
Mr. Ikeda.
No.
Mr. Pelago.
Aye.
Ms. Smart.
Aye.
Mr. Yugong.
Aye.
Chair Yoshimoto.
Aye. Oh, Mr. Onishi's here.
Thank you. Mr. Onishi.
No.
Chair Yoshimoto, you have 7 ayes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Clerk. Bill 292 moves forward to council with a positive vote. Hey, motion to adjourn, anyone?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much.